Snow fell in slow, heavy spirals, muffling the small town in an eerie silence. Streetlights glowed faintly through the fog, casting long shadows on empty sidewalks. Most people were safe inside their homes, wrapped in blankets, unaware that just a few blocks away, an elderly woman was struggling for her life. Margaret Holloway had lived alone since her husband passed away 6 years ago. That night, she had gone out to collect her mail, stubborn as always, refusing to wait for morning. Her hands trembled as she leaned on her cane, the cold biting into her bones. Halfway back to her door, a sudden sharp pain seized her chest. The world tilted. Her cane slipped from her fingers, and she collapsed onto the icy pavement. Her breath came in shallow gasps. The phone in her pocket felt miles away. Her voice barely escaped her lips. "Help, please." But the street was empty. Just then, a low, steady bark echoed through the fog. From around the corner emerged a large German shepherd, his fur dusted with snow, eyes alert and intelligent. His name was Rex, a K-9 officer trained for search and rescue. He had broken away from his handler after sensing something wrong, a sound too faint for human ears, a distress signal carried by instinct. Rex approached slowly, carefully, sniffing the air. When he reached Margaret, he let out a soft whine. She tried to lift her hand, but it fell weakly to the ground. "Good boy," she whispered. Rex immediately understood. He nudged her face gently with his nose, then turned and barked loudly, repeatedly, his voice cutting through the quiet night. No one came. Without hesitation, Rex did something unexpected. He pressed his warm body against Margaret, shielding her from the cold, and began licking her face, keeping her conscious. Every few seconds, he would lift his head and bark again, louder than before. Minutes passed, then more. Margaret's vision blurred. She felt herself slipping, memories flooding her mind, her wedding day, her children's laughter, her husband's smile. Then distant footsteps. A man stepped out of a nearby building, startled by the barking. "What the?" He saw the dog first. Then the woman. Within moments, emergency services were called. As paramedics rushed Margaret into the ambulance, one of them knelt beside Rex. "This dog saved her life," he said in disbelief, but Rex didn't move. He sat by the ambulance doors, watching her. Because, for Rex, this was not just a rescue, it was a promise, and the real story had only just begun. Margaret woke to the soft beeping of machines and the smell of antiseptic. For a moment, she thought she was still lying on the frozen sidewalk, waiting for the darkness to take her. But then she felt warmth, real warmth, and heard a familiar, steady breathing beside her. She turned her head slowly. Rex was there, lying on the floor next to her hospital bed, his massive frame curled into a careful circle, his eyes locked onto her face as if afraid she might disappear. When their eyes met, his ears lifted and his tail thumped once against the tile. Tears rolled down Margaret's cheeks. "You stayed," she whispered. Rex rose instantly and placed his chin gently on the edge of her mattress, whining softly. A nurse entered the room, freezing in place. "Oh my goodness," she murmured, "you're awake." Margaret nodded weakly. "That dog, he saved me." The nurse smiled. "We know. He refused to leave. The officers tried to take him back, but he wouldn't budge. He stayed right outside the operating room all night." Just then, a tall man in uniform stepped inside. His eyes were tired, red from lack of sleep. "Ma'am," he said softly, "I'm Officer Daniel Hayes. Rex is my partner." Margaret reached out and rested her trembling fingers on Rex's head. "Note, he's my angel." Daniel swallowed hard. Over the next few days, Margaret learned what had truly happened. Her heart attack had been severe. If Rex hadn't found her when he did, she would have frozen before anyone ever noticed. But Rex didn't just find her. He guarded her. One night, a confused patient wandered into her room, disoriented and aggressive. Rex stood between them, calm but firm, refusing to move until help arrived. Another time, when Margaret's heart rate spiked dangerously, Rex began barking uncontrollably, alerting staff before the monitors even caught it. Doctors were stunned. "He's not just trained," one of them said. "He's emotionally connected." Margaret felt it too. She had lost everyone: her husband, her sister, most of her friends. Loneliness had slowly wrapped around her life like a second skin. But Rex looked at her like she mattered, like she was his. One afternoon, Daniel sat beside her bed. "There's something you should know," he said quietly. Margaret looked at him. "Rex is being retired." Her heart sank. "Why?" "He took a bullet 6 months ago during a raid, recovered physically, but he's different now, more sensitive, more protective. The department thinks he's no longer fit for duty." Margaret wrapped her arms around Rex's neck. "Then don't take him away," she whispered. Daniel hesitated. "Ma'am, are you saying?" "Yes," she said firmly, surprising even herself. "I want him if he'll have me." Daniel looked down at Rex. Rex licked Margaret's cheek. Decision made. Weeks later, Margaret walked out of the hospital with a cane in one hand and Rex's leash in the other. The town watched in awe. The old woman who once walked alone now had a guardian, but Rex wasn't just protecting her. He was healing her. They became inseparable. Rex learned her routines, waited patiently as she watered her plants, followed her slowly on walks, and slept beside her bed every night. And Margaret, she laughed again, she lived again. Then one evening, something happened. A fire broke out in the building next door. Smoke poured through Margaret's open window. She was asleep, but Rex wasn't. He leaped onto her bed, barking wildly, pulling at her blanket, dragging her hand. When she didn't respond fast enough, he ran to the door, barked, ran back, and tugged again. Margaret woke coughing. Within seconds, Rex was guiding her out of the apartment, barking so loudly that neighbors poured into the hallway. Firefighters arrived moments later. The building was evacuated. Margaret was safe again. News spread. Headlines exploded. Retired police dog saves elderly woman twice. Hero K9 finds new purpose. Reporters came. Cameras flashed. People applauded. But Rex didn't care. He only cared about her. Months later, Margaret stood on a small stage in town square. Her hands trembled as she held the microphone. "This dog," she said, voice cracking, "didn't just save my life. He gave me one." Rex sat proudly beside her. And when the crowd rose in a standing ovation, Rex didn't look at them. He looked at Margaret because he knew. This wasn't duty, this was love.